Okay, so before I start, I'm just going to put out there that my YouTube page is for my YSU classes and my high school classes for extra resources, practice, vocabulary, fingerspelling, sentences that we've already been working on, specific lessons. I do close caption some of my videos for practice purposes. Some of them, the students need to just use their ASL skills. So it all depends. But if you are trying to learn ASL from my YouTube, I think you probably need some kind of like starting point. And that's what I'm going to do here. It's just going to be short, but explains what you need to know before you start learning signs. Okay. I do type my closed captions myself, so they are accurate. But again, this is for learning ASL, so it's not everything signed all the time, always. I'm just trying my best to help anyone learn and pick up some skills from it. So, first, before you even start using your hands, you need to understand that there is a foundation of language that is very, very real. It's considered a world language, and it meets all of the requirements of the definition of language. So we're going to just start with that. A lot of people learn that I know ASL, and they'll just come up to me and be like, "Oh, I saw a sign and it's this. What is it?" And I'm like, "Ooh, I don't know." Or my kid's in school and they're teaching him sign and he did this. What is it? I'm like, I have no idea. Because what you don't realize is that every single sign has 5 parts. And so if you don't sign them accurately and you mess up one of those parts, it's going to throw off the whole sign and it's not going to make sense. So the 5 parts, they're called the 5 parameters of ASL. And this chart was just cute. I didn't make it. I found it on the internet and it's not perfect. So I added a little bit more. So the 5 parameters are hand shape, location, movement, palm orientation, which means which way is your palm facing. And then this is facial expressions, but that's too basic. They need to be called non-manual markers, NMM. Some people call them non-manual signals, which is your facial expressions, your mouth morphemes, your shoulders, your neck, anything. So non-manual. ASL is considered a manual language, meaning you're using your hands. So anything that's part of the language that's not your hands. So think about it. Every single sign uses these non-manual markers. So it's not just your hands. So it's a visual, manual language. Your hand shape. So going back up here, there are 45 different hand shapes in ASL. Okay, so just like in English, we have 44 phonemes right here. Phonemes. And the definition of a phoneme, a lot of people in linguistics will explain it as different sounds within a language, but that's not very accurate when you're thinking about, not verbal languages. So phonemes are basically the 5 parameters and morphemes in ASL. Alone, a phoneme doesn't mean anything. A phoneme, the definition, is the smallest unit of language that holds no meaning. So if you just take individual sounds like ah, a, ah, what does that mean? Nothing. E, nothing. Th, nothing. Okay? So those individual sounds are these small chunks of language units that have no meaning by themselves. If I just gave you a T handshake, just like this, it means nothing. It's a phoneme. But once you start chunking those phonemes together, you can create words. If I have a th sound and an E and I put them together, I now have a chunk of a word that says the. Okay, so you start combining them to make chunks. So alone, these phonemes or these parameters of ASL mean nothing. And if you miss one, or you forget one, or you mess one up, you can change the whole meaning of the sign or make it meaningless. So they all have to be correct. So someone coming up to me like, what does this mean? I don't know. It might mean dad, but you have it in the wrong location. It might mean hi, but you're not moving it correctly. So you see, like everything you do has to be really precise. So when you're learning new signs, you need to think about that sign in 5 different ways and remember all 5 parts. So it could seem complicated, but then at the same time, the more you think about one thing, the easier it is going to go into your long-term memory. So think about every single sign that you see. Oh, what was that hand shape? What was the location, the movement, the palm orientation, and the non-manual markers? So we have these 5 phonemes / morphemes. Morphemes, let's go up to that, is the smallest units of language that hold meaning. So they're little more chunked. So in English, for example, ing is a chunk that by itself doesn't hold any meaning. That's not a complete word. But if I add it to a word that already exists, like going, right? It now means like the present tense of you're doing it, or could be, I'm going to go. No, going, the present tense. Ed, doesn't mean anything by itself. Add it to learned. I learn. Learn is a word. It's a chunk. And then you add ed, this morpheme, it holds meaning. Ed means past tense, but alone it doesn't make sense. You have to connect it to something. So that ed went from learn to learned. I have already finished learning it, past tense. Adding an s, things like that. So they're a little bit bigger than phonemes because they have meaning, but they need to be added something to have that meaning. So our facial expressions, we have within that, in those non-manual markers, we have mouth morphemes. So anytime you say cha, it's something big. Anytime you say psh, it means you're done. Anytime you say pa, you mean successful or it worked. So yeah, I could say pa, and I know something successful, but what was successful? What worked? So I have to add these to my signs for them to make sense. So alone, it might be a morpheme or a phoneme, but when I put them all together, I now have a sign. So that's really important. And here's a really great example, actually 2 great examples. The sign for summer. I have an X hand shape, the letter X. So it's kind of like a 1 to an X, and I drag it across my forehead. Summer. So hand shape, 1 to an X, location, forehead, movement from, for me, left to right, depending on if you're left-handed or right-handed. My palm orientation is down, and my facial expression could be kind of neutral, or depending on what you're talking about, like summer, I love summer, depending. We'll get to that. But if I drop my location a little bit and I sign it down here, it now means ugly. Okay? So my hand shape is 1 to an X. My location is under my nose. My movement is, again, exactly the same. My palm orientation. And depending on what I'm talking about, are they like super ugly, like repulsive, or they're not ugly at all? Depends. Now, if I drop it a little lower, this now means dry. Okay? So again, same hand shape, same location, or not same location. The location's the parameter that changed. Same movement, same palm orientation, and depending, is it so dry? It's not dry. Sorry. So that sign, or 4 of those parameters are exactly the same. Okay? 1 has been changed. So the sign changes 3 different meanings that don't really relate to each other at all. Okay? So see, what does this mean? I don't know. I don't know what it means. Put it somewhere. Like, add some more of your parameters so that you're making a complete sign. Another one, school. So my hand shape, open B, 5 maybe, if you want to, open B. My location is in front of me in a neutral space. My movement is up and down. My palm orientation is facing each other. And my facial expressions, depending on what I'm talking about, they change. So, school. Change my movement. Clean. Paper. Okay? So, very similar, very intricate language. And so if you mess one of these parameters up, you mess up the whole thing. And that's not good. So you want to really focus on that. Okay, so now that we've talked about all of our phonemes and morphemes, and we have understanding of what those things are, our sentence structure. This is going to be very basic and very short. But there are more sentence structures and more declarative sentences and this kind of sentence and WH questions and RH questions. But most simplistic, the syntax of ASL, syntax meaning the word order, is different than that of English. Okay? In English, it's very linear, and we're taught to describe, and then tell what it is. Always cliffhangers, leading up, building up to what we want to talk about. But in ASL, it's a visual language. We want to paint a picture for everyone to see. If I say in English, oh, the princess was being guarded by a dragon, everyone is going to picture that dragon differently based on stories you've read, movies you've seen, your picture of a dragon. Because all I said was dragon. But in ASL, if I say dragon, I'm going to paint you this beautiful image. It was green, it had scales, it had wings, it had claws, it had fangs, its eyes were beating red, I'm going to describe what this thing looks like to describe a dragon. So if I'm talking about a bear, I'm going to say bear first, and then I'm going to add that it was big. I'm going to add that it was brown. I'm going to add that it was scary. So I'm not going to say the big, brown, scary bear. I'm going to say the bear, and then I'm going to add the detail to it. So it's like a blank coloring page. I have the outline of a bear, and then I add those details, and then I can see it. So it's called topic, comment, structure. What are you talking about first? Then describe it. School, I went. Not I went to school, like we would say in English. Okay? Now, if there's time always comes first. Why? Because we don't have articles. We don't have prefixes. We don't have suffixes. So our sentences are a little bit different. If I want to change go to went in my sentence, I can't. There's not a different sign. We don't have that irregular verb. So I would say, yesterday I go school. Yesterday school I go. Sorry, topic, comment. And that yesterday sets my tone, sets my sentence structure to be in the past tense. If it doesn't have a specific time, just in the past, I went. Or before I went, I'm going. So right now, am I going? Because there is no ing. So do I add that time first? Now, today, I am going. In the future, I will be going. Next week, in a month, I am going. So to add those prefixes and suffixes and your irregular verbs, your time has to come first within your sentence or within your topic of conversation. And then you don't have to keep adding it once you're already placed in that tense. So time comes first, then what you're talking about, school, restaurant, friend, and then what about them. Okay, that's the basic syntax. Last thing, WH questions always go at the end of the sentence. Who, what, where, when, why. And I have a video with those signs. So, what is your name? No articles. Get rid of is. Okay? Topic or your name comes first. So now what is, no is, what goes at the end? Your name what? Okay? Are you going? No are. You going where? Did I say where are you going? Yeah, where are you going? So you go where? Topic. What about it? WH question. Okay? So that's the basics. As simple as I can make them. And now you can start looking at the vocabulary, looking at the practice sentences, and start adding them together and making complete sentences. So good luck. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it wasn't too much information for a short video just to get you started. But let me know if you want to know anything else. I will gladly post it. But